What's your relationship like with Sony? Do you love every single camera? Do you wish like, oh my gosh, where's the Sony a7S III? I love Sony, but sometimes it's just like when I see the Canon stuff, I'm like, ooh, Sony, wait, you got to pick it up. Like you guys were the ones who did everything that, we asked of you, which I think, again, the new cameras that's coming out, I think we're going to see the start of that again, but I think people are concerned.
Yeah, I mean, I guess it's the investment in glass or whatever, but if you look at things just from like a bystander, it's great that everybody's like pushing back because and it's hard to take anything away from Sony when they were so far ahead and have done and I feel like anybody that's caught up because of the fire that Sony like lit under them, right? So that's awesome, and I love that. But
capitalism, that's how capitalism should work, not like,
and it's great for us
having two phone provide. Yeah, that's when it works. That's great.
And so I love that. And some of those cameras that came out in that push, like the a7 III, are still like some of the best value cameras of all time. And
I love the a7 III.
How can you not? Like up to this point, I would say that all other cameras have done is like matched it.
Yeah.
Nobody's really beat it in terms of everything that it can do. There are some cameras that are better in some ways, but as sort of like just anybody that's tried to make a well-rounded camera has basically just tied the Sony or just said, we're not going to have autofocus or something like taking something big out, right? So It's still a great system, but again, I want the next one like everybody else, but I'm not part of the like A7S III, meme culture of it or whatever. I think that I want it to be
with it.
Yeah,
I was like, I'm fine. Like I was so slow to the A7 III because I was that delusional person. It's like, I'm not going to buy the A7 III because the A7S III is going to come out. I gotta wait for that.
It's been like 2 years, hasn't it? Like 2 years.
Yeah, literally, I think like 9 months went by and I was like, oh, I probably need to buy this A7 III. And I love it. It's great. But it's so disappointing because I'm like Sony gang, but Blackmagic GH5, I'm pretty actually camera agnostic, I think. But whenever Canon creeps up, because, I used to use them and then I made the Sony jump. I was one of those mini people. Whenever Canon news comes out, as high as my hopes get, I just don't believe them. Like with this new,
I know what you mean.
I'm like what is it, R5? Why am I blanking on the name? Right, R5? I'm just like, and we know the price point is crazy. But I don't know if I believe all of it. I don't know. What do you think of the R5? Have you used the EOS R as well?
I have. Okay. And I didn't love that camera.
Okay.
That was an example of one that I thought, especially at launch, I was like, oh, it's a worse A7 III. Cool. Yeah. See ya. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
Like I didn't care. It was like, it crops the same as my GH5. The autofocus was poor. I was like, I already have a GH5. Why do you want me to buy new lenses? Although those lenses are fantastic, and now that they've been adding more to that lineup, that RF lineup is great. So that's another reason to get excited about the R5, right?
Yeah.
But the specs on the R5 are absurd. They're absolutely absurd. So it's like, there's no way, right? Like that camera's gonna melt as soon as you use it.
I think that's what. Yeah. I'm like, there's no way because of the specs. I'm like, there's no way that it's gonna be practical, where I could use it for YouTube, but also use it for an hour interview or something. I don't know.
That being said, though, one thing that Canon has always been good for is that when they do release something, especially when it's like their higher ticket, like sort of pro-ish bodies, usually they're pretty reliable and indestructible. The only thing is that they like handicap certain features, but they specifically address those in the specs. They were like 4K, uncropped, no like with autofocus or whatever. Like they mentioned all the things that the like the regular gags of like how Canon eliminates something, whatever they say, like internally crippling their cameras so that they don't cannibalize themselves. But
when they had the new 90D and you couldn't record in 24 frames per second in 1080, like what the hell was that?
Exactly. So they specifically mentioned it's like it doesn't have those problems. And so if you take that and you think, and Canon usually they don't melt and they usually last, so then. Right. Okay, like did you completely change attitudes to where now you're Sony, where you like put all this crazy tech in, but it's unreliable? Right. Because now Sony's been more and more reliable with every camera they come up, but they're not coming out with new features, right?
I know.
So
I don't know who's doing what. It's the reverse. It's literally that's what happens. That is the cycle because it happened with MacBook and PCs. That's exactly what happened in 2016 with the MacBook Pro. It started to be the most unreliable computer or laptop out there, with the keyboard, with display issues, with
and now they're not doing anything fancy. They're just making everything work.
Exactly. And now Apple said, okay, we'll chill. And this last previous update, the 2019, super, they didn't do anything out of the box, but they iterated. And it's actually a really good machine now. But then the PC laptop world is over here putting like 3 screens on one computer. And I'm just like, what is this world that we're living in?
So I don't know which side of that Canon is on. Obviously the specs are outstanding, but I never make videos on, like, I don't make news or rumor type videos very much, where it's like, I don't ever talk about a product unless it's in my hands.
No, totally. I totally, yeah.
So we can gab about it, but as far as like, do I have an opinion on it? I'm like, I've read the same things you've read, and I'm like, okay, but I so badly just want to even just point it at a wall and press record and just leave it there for like an hour and then come back to it and see what happened. That's all I want to do with the R5.
Yeah. No, 100%. And the EOS R, can you explain to me, and you're a little bit more science, I feel like, with cameras than me, why? So we have finally a Canon mirrorless camera. Why do the lenses have to literally be almost like bigger than the E-mount? I don't understand. Like, mirrorless cameras should be sleek, thinner. But then you look at that 24-70, you look at any of the new lenses, and they're starting an entirely new lens line. You would think they would be a little bit more portable. Am I wrong to say that? What's going on? Why? Why do they have to be such big hunks of glass?
I feel like somewhere along the line, somebody equated mirrorless with like small and portable and everything. Yeah. Maybe that was like when it was first trying to make a name for itself.
Okay.
Because
so
DSLRs
is that just not
everything.
True? So maybe for the body, but not for the glass.
But I mean, like, now you could still do both. You can still make small mirrorless. It really comes down to what you're trying to do. So if you're going for a large sensor, then you're going to be bigger, because Micro Four Thirds is still pretty compact for mirrorless, right? But if you're going to go for a large sensor, then that's one thing to consider. And if you want to be able to make really fast lenses, which is, they did like that 24-70 f2 or whatever, right? Which is like, that's like almost like a brag lens of like, look what we're able to make. Well, that's all just a ratio of the elements. So the element of the lens itself has to be wide. And so then the mount has to be wide in order to put it on. Right. And then all the pieces of glass are wide. Yeah. And then you have to fix the image as it comes in, because when you do something really wide, that can also zoom. Then you have to have pieces of glass that are there solely just to like correct weird things that happen with the light. So then you end up with like a bunch of elements, which then makes the lens big and chonky, and the price goes up and everything. But you don't have to make a 24-70 f2. But I guess when you're in your marketing meetings or whatever, and you're coming up with the next plan, you got to decide: are we going to make something that's the smallest thing? Are we going to make the fastest thing the best thing? And I guess there's different ways that you can go. Mirrorless isn't restricted to just travel or portable or whatever. Apparently, you can make big even Nikon made their like that knocked lens that was like the 0.95. So like we can really, the only thing that mirrorless says is that your flange distance is short because you don't have a mirror box anymore. So the lens is actually closer. So I guess it can be smaller that way. But really, that only makes a difference of, you don't have a mirror box. Outside of that, it's up to your imagination what you do, you know? So.
And with these flange distances, I guess that when everyone has a mirrorless camera, that's going to make the lens market even, like, basically I'm used to just adapting everything, right?
Yeah.
Everyone said, hey, if you have Canon glass, you're good. Right? You can just use a speed booster, an adapter. You can adapt it probably to most modern cameras and you'll be fine. But with everyone going mirrorless and that flange distance changing, will that change how adapting works? Like, I won't be able to take the new Canon mirrorless lenses and put them on my Sony mirrorless camera with an adapter, right?
There's only like one or two exceptions to that rule where it's like, there's a big enough gap between the different mirrorless sizes. I think there's one between Nikon and Sony where you actually can.
Oh,
but most of the time it's only like 2 or 3 millimeters. Like from Canon to Sony is only like 2 millimeters. So that you can't physically make an adapter to fit in there. So I'm going to say, outside of like an odd exception, it's always going to has to be DSLR glass goes on a mirrorless body. as far as what that means for the market moving forward, I mean, there's always going to be lots of glass out there and people love vintage lenses and stuff like that. But I do think that we're still in a period where there probably will still make like EF lenses. But if we were having this conversation 5 years from now, I don't know if it would be like, why bother just so people can adapt them? Right?
Yeah.
Like that, I mean,
right.
who's buying DSLRs then?
And can you speak to, because for a while people have associated, okay, mirrorless, it's like there's more practical things that line up with video, right? With mirrorless, you have an EVF and you can, like, a lot of photographers like the practicality of like an optical viewfinder, and it can just, there's certain things associated with it. Is that becoming, like, can you just speak to that in terms of like photographer or videographer? Is everyone going mirrorless? Is that 100% where all of these cameras are going? Like, will a DSLR camera be new? Like, will a new DSLR camera come out in 7 years?
I feel like the companies, the ones that are making DSLRs and who's buying them, is for professionals that have shot a certain way all along and just want a refresh. But I don't know if but those same professionals, I've actually talked to some who I know, like with Nikon, they always use like the D4, D3, D4, D5, and Nikon makes another one of those. So they're making them for that person. They're not making them for some new consumer to come in and buy a $7,000 DSLR or whatever, right? But those same people are having the inner debate where they go, should I get the new, D6 or should I switch over to the mirrorless stuff? So I feel like they're making them just to satisfy, give the 1DX Mark III. I mean, that's got to be the last one of those, I would guess. You know what I mean? For the people that were heavy into the 1DX Mark II, are hesitant about jumping over to mirrorless, they have an option. But this might be your last option. And then, I mean, I'm just guessing over here. But I don't think it's for anybody new. I think anybody new and anybody who's hobbyist or anybody who's buying a camera for a hybrid purpose or any of those things, which is a huge portion. We just described everybody that isn't shooting birds, right? They're buying mirrorless. They got to be. I would say so. And so, yeah, I mean, I don't know how long or when the full phase out is going to take place, but I mean, we're definitely on the ramp where it's got to be on it's got to be.